Order. Okay. Could I get permission to include, who's on the phone?
Linda and Rachel.
Linda and Rachel. Got a motion. Thank you, Mr. Rosenbaum, on a second. Thank you, Betty. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. All right, that would be unanimous. Rachel, welcome.
Thank you.
Linda, welcome.
Thanks.
The other one.
Sorry, Linda, I got a block in my head. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of March 1 and March 10? Thank you, Paul. A second. Thank you, Dr. Blair. Any additions or corrections to those minutes as they've been submitted? Hearing none, please vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. And that would be recorded as unanimous. I will go to informational and talk with Mr. Sorrell.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Member Blair has a very short slide deck to update the committee on the work of the advisory committee that she chairs.
Hi, everyone. I like that point. It's going to be short, isn't it? Kind of thing. I made a joke that
Yes, Professor.
I'm meeting someone after this, and I don't know how long this will take. She's like, if you're going to present it, it's going to be either 50 minutes or 75, because that's the only units of time we work in. So thank you. We've been meeting as a board since as a committee since the fall of 2021, or a little bit earlier than that, I think, trying to decide what to do as a committee. So this is really our, oh, I have to turn it on, sorry. Scott told me what to do. So this is the membership of our committee. We wanted to keep this relatively small, since this is really a working group trying to decide what to do and what to advise. So there are groups that are not, that are engaged in entrepreneurship in this area that are not on this, in this membership. But we do have several different groups represented. Hanson Professional Services, we have both the Turner Center for Entrepreneurship and the Turner School of Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Bradley. If you ever wondered what the difference is, the Turner Center works with the public, and the Turner School works inside with the students. We've got the outgoing executive director of Distillery Labs, and I hope to have an incoming one join us when we hear that. Kip is at OSF and vice president of innovation. We've got Denise Moore, and we've got Chris Eddy and Andrew Nui from the Greater Peoria Economic Development Council. So what are our goals? Well, we're trying to focus on a gap analysis of the Peoria County business environment. And I think one of the things that we have really noticed is that we've got all these great organizations supporting entrepreneurs and small business owners in this area, but sometimes what they're doing is redundant, and also figuring out if you're an outside person, so you're an entrepreneur just starting, how to get access to these people can be quite a challenge. We're going to make recommendations on preparing entrepreneurs to become business owners and develop kind of a toolkit of resource availability to assist. Just a reminder, we do have the Keystone Funds for economic development. We're sitting at about $8 million that has not been spent in there. For ARPA funds, we have about $1 million for small business that has to be spent by 2026, correct, Scott? So we've got money, and we need to be utilizing it to support our entrepreneurs and small business owners in the area, because that's great money for leveraging more great things to happen in this area. So what's our role here? So if we look at an entrepreneurial ecosystem, these are all the people and organizations that support entrepreneurship in areas. So of course you have entrepreneurs, and the next biggest one is investors, the people who finance entrepreneurs. We have mentors, so that could be people such as the Greater Peoria EDC, Distillery Labs, these groups who are helping people validate their ideas and test them. We've got educational institutions like ICC and Bradley supporting it. We've got advisors from this area who can help support, and of course then we have government agencies like this one who can support us. So what do we have a challenge with? In talking to people, they often just don't know where to start. I Googled today how to start a business Peoria, and the first thing I found was the Hello Peoria site from the Greater Peoria Economic Development EDC, which is great, but they showed 2 people to talk to who no longer have those positions. So contacting those 2 people actually won't work. I'm guessing their emails are going to bounce. So that's something that is not good if you want to start a business. Also, we find that people in vulnerable populations, women and minority business owners, or people who want to become business owners, often feel even more unsure of where to go to get things started. Note that entrepreneurs are not all the same. So an entrepreneur could be starting a landscaping business and just needs a lawnmower and a couple pieces of equipment to get started, to a high growth business that's going to need lots of investment capital in order to get started. So how we support those is going to be different. Accessing capital is always the most challenging piece for an entrepreneur to get started. And when you make a mistake, that can be costly. And some of it's just, when should I spend money on a lawyer, right? And then we'll find people who don't want to spend money on a lawyer who probably should have seen a lawyer earlier in the process. Or some will spend thousands of dollars on a lawyer when those are decisions they could have made without legal advice. So both of those can be costly mistakes. So here's one of the things that we've learned in entrepreneurship about how to best support entrepreneurs. So it used to be that if you wanted to start, you had a great idea, you would develop this kind of business plan and raise all this money, right? Start your business and then sell whatever it is you're selling. And the problem with that process is that you've spent all this money and time and energy, quit your job, done all these things, and you have yet to talk to a customer about whether you actually have a product that someone wants to buy, right? And so then we see companies like Firefly who burned through millions of dollars of cash, some of it was ours, right? Who never even got a product to the customer, to the best of my knowledge. So what we have determined is that there's ways of helping to mitigate that risk by starting early in getting the entrepreneurs to start talking to customers and to people about their idea, and do a process called fail forward, fail fast, or fail cheap. So why not, instead of spending all this time and money to write a beautiful 45-page business plan, right, and raise all this money, why don't I instead spend a little bit of money to test my idea, to go in front of customers, to build a prototype, to create a landing page on a website so that people can I can start determining earlier in the process whether I have something anybody wants to buy. And the answer there could be yes, which is great. It could be that no, which is also great because you've learned very cheaply and quickly that you have a terrible idea. And it also could be yes, but. So some of it's okay, but you just need to adjust the way that you're thinking. So we call that pivoting, to try something slightly different. All of those are okay answers as long as we haven't spent tons of money on it. So we have programs in town like Brave Launch, Distillery Labs, G-Beta, these programs in town to help you validate your idea. We also have mentors in town to help you figure out how to talk to customers and figure out, do you have something of value? And if you can do that and spend maybe 6 months and $5,000 and find out you have a terrible idea, that's a win because you've stopped then, right? Versus doing more. And as a county, we have to accept a certain amount of failure as a healthy thing for our ecosystem. That if we learn that what we're doing is bad, we stop and not spend any more money on it. Does that make sense? I would love to see Peoria County do more of this kind of process, but that's for a different day. And so we want to validate the opportunity. And so what it means is that the more information you get that supports that what you're doing is good, the better. And so it used to be that we would protect our ideas and not tell anybody about them until they're ready to go. Think of the Segway, and that they spent millions of dollars on and wouldn't tell you what it was. And then when people saw it, they're like, that's the nerdiest thing I've ever seen in my life, and no one bought it. Because they never showed it to customers, just to other engineers who are kind of nerdy. So this is kind of where we are at as a county, as to where we think we can help. So one is a communication strategy for entrepreneurs. So if I Google how to start a business in Peoria, I come to some kind of landing page or area that says, okay, here's what you need to do next. And we are working with a local entrepreneur right now that might be a good option for helping people go, okay, I have these kinds of businesses, who do I need to talk to? And so people can actually go somewhere and see all the great things happening. This is a draft that was created by the GPEDC of kind of some of the things that are happening around this area. This is both organizations and events that you could click on to learn more about them and where you need to go. So this could be something that Gretchen's team can help with us, or maybe we outsource to help develop this. But this could be something useful that Peoria County could invest in to help entrepreneurs who are just stuck at, I've got a great idea, where do I go? This, by the way, is not all inclusive. I know people have been left off, organizations have been left off this thing, and that's just because it's a draft form. What we're also looking at is the Peoria County Passport Program. Say that 3 times fast. The idea here is that would-be entrepreneurs or local small business owners can go through a program that says, yes, I've talked to the Small Business Development Center. Yes, I've talked to Distillery Labs, right? I've talked to the Minority Business Development Center. I've talked to some bankers, whatever it might be. And once their idea has been validated, so they've talked to Small Business Development Center, who's helped them find out whether there'd be any customers in this area, they get a stamp. This is probably going to be a digital platform, right? But some kind of stamp that says, yeah, they've passed this mark. So it's not just talking to the person, but really validating the idea. And then depending on the kind of business, they'll go see different people. And what we would like to see is that once you have earned your passport, through the ARPA funds, then we can actually give micro grants to these entrepreneurs to help them go from idea to really the next step in where they need to go. So in our mind, we're thinking about $10,000. So if you think maybe 10 organizations would pass every year, or at least in a pilot program, that'd be about $100,000 a year. A $10,000 grant to build a prototype, to help develop an app or website, if that makes sense for the business. Whatever it might be that maybe they just need some working capital to get to the next step. That $10,000 is often needed to prove enough of your business to then get it in front of investors. Yeah.
So Dr. Blair, would that still have to be then approved by the board after the steps are? You said you get stamps and then you could apply for the money. In the past, we've had certain businesses that were not interested in funding.
So my understanding, right, Scott, is that this kind of, we give money for this program. So then the program gets to decide whether it gives out these grants. Is that how you read it, Scott?
We could structure it that way. We can structure it, since we're building it, we can structure it that way. We can structure it where the administrator, because it's technically within my spending authority, could do it and have report outs to this committee, or the board's really it wants to have tighter reins over those dollars. It could come before the board for each individual grant that would be made. So since we're building it, we've got a lot of flexibility in terms of how you might want to structure it.
And my idea would be that if we have enough members of our ecosystem who have said this is a good idea, then it probably makes sense that if we told them if you get through this passport, you can earn a grant, that they can then get that grant. Now they have to not just have seen these people, they have to have gotten the approval from these people that they're not, it's not a crazy idea. But again, this is going to be up to the board as to how they decide to do it.
Well, I'm just curious for some sort of accountability. I mean, in the past, we've had some big arguments around the table of businesses ask people to expose personal finances. We approved a piece of equipment that one time for a purchase, and I don't ever know what happened to it. We also talked about a very well-established building that was going through a split to move. They actually had the capital. They didn't need the money. But I'm just curious of what, in the past we had done restaurants, and then we had decided we're no longer going to do restaurants because they have a high failure rate. When I just was curious of what kind of...
It's going to be I think it's the board's comfort level. To me, if we give out these grants, I would fully expect half of them still never to get beyond what they're doing, because that's just how the entrepreneurial process works, right? But if we got 5 out of 10 so that's 5 out of 10 to be really successful, then that $100,000 spent on all 10 was worth it to the area, in my mind.
I think both, or I can think of 3 kinds of processes, Jim. With our involvement, without our involvement, or some hybrid because we command Scott's employment here, could work. But you're at a stage now where you're just talking about how you want to do that.
Yeah.
10,000 is a pretty small hill. I know it sounds like a lot of money because it's still $10,000, but sometimes we get in our own way trying to invest. I don't like the word giveaway. I like the word invest in these ideas. It's, do we really want our administrator to be the last stop as to whether something gets approved or not? That sounds like a political football to me. So either we invest in a process and trust it and review it every year or 2 years or 3 years. Maybe that's the way to approach it, and do a look back and see what the success rate was or the failure rate was. But it is a little bit like stepping off a cliff to do it that way. I think we just have to be bold. For 14 years, which is how long I've been on this board, I've been too afraid to invest money in anything except the county. And I think the way we approach this needs to be different than the way we have approached this.
Well, I was just curious if that, since I'm guessing that this board is intended to be a long-term board, this entrepreneurship, or
it's only around that we know of for 2 years, but that's up to the chair as to whether we get this advisory board redone.
It'll have to be reconstituted in the board's rules.
Yeah.
But I was just curious if this board, since you have entrepreneurship people and business people, to take the politics stuff out of it, that if this board would be the ones approving it from start to finish once we have seed money.
And again, if you think about it, this board are the people who are most likely, stamping these passports too. These are the people who are going to be seeing these ideas. So they'll have seen these ideas before they come up for a grant, because these entrepreneurs will have gone to these different organizations to ask for help.
I'm just thinking from in the past, if you're going to have that group, and I think if you could get the commitment of long term, I would be this as just me speaking, perfectly comfortable with that group vetting it, and if they approved it after the seed money, because in the past we would bring groups that weren't fully vetted all the time, or there was just some errors, and if they can meet the muster with that group, I think I would have a comfort level. But I'm just thinking out the box right now.
Paul, I saw your hand. Phil, I saw your hand. Sorry.
Dr. Black, I'm looking at you talk about entrepreneurship. I'm hearing of many of these people trying to start a business and so forth, probably without your guys' help. What if they get into business on their own and they're operating for 2 or 3 years, but then all of a sudden they run into a problem? Can they still come to you or do they have to be from ground level up, or are you gonna help some of these small businesses that have tried to start on their own, and they get right down to about 3 or 4 years, and they say, gee, if I just had.
If I just had this money, I think they would still have to prove that they truly could do something with that money to grow. I could absolutely see a business that's been in business for 10 years who now wants to expand and scale up and get employees, and do that because they're acting entrepreneurially, right?
Yeah.
They're growing. I could absolutely see them go through these same processes to grow and then need this little bit of working capital in order to make that happen. Like they can be successful just the way they are, but if they want to grow, they need some more capital. And it still may be hard to get bank funding just because of the size of the business and the kinds of assets and collateral they have. And so they need some little start to help them go forward.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
I think all this is an investment, as Andrew said, that if we help entrepreneurs be successful, even if that success is, this is a terrible idea and I need to stop it now, that's a good thing. So that's helping support keeping talent in town or in the area. It helps us by getting more people employed by these groups, helps us because they're buying property in this area, right? Helps us because entrepreneurship can be a great way to support DEI initiatives, and all of those are good things. And I don't want to see what's been happening, which is that we're sitting on $9 million that could be invested and leverage some great things happening in this area, and it's just sitting there basically unspent. Yeah.
So your question on the slide is how can the county help? I guess, do you have a next steps? I think you put an idea and a thought out that the committee had put together. Are you looking at a decision in the next 20 days, 30 days, 60 days to
60 to 90 days, would you say, Scott? We are meeting, the committee meets on Thursday at 10:30 a.m. in this room. If you want to come, you're always welcome. I think the next piece that we're looking at is there is a local entrepreneur who can help, who has been working on these platforms that we are meeting with, because that organization's platform could be the thing that we fund, right, to help get this started. And part of that is, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm this type of entrepreneur, here's what I've already done, here's the things I still need to do. And it goes, okay, you need to do these things, you need to talk to these people. And then we can have a back-end thing that says, okay, they not only met with these people, but once they've met with them, that person went, I think they validated their idea. Yeah.
I guess kind of play off of Jimmy's comments as one board member. I'd like to see this committee kind of build out their guidelines, and then however it gets implemented, I think we have to make it easy for the entrepreneur. If the entrepreneur has to come and sit in front of a board of 18, that's intimidating. That's not friendly, business friendly, entrepreneur friendly. So to me, we need a recommendation to come back from this committee that says, okay, here's our guidelines. We'd like for the board to agree to fund X dollars out of, 100,000 out of this, or 200,000, whatever this, for this time period with these type of guidelines, and give that committee or whoever the authority to enact and go. And they'll report back to us how they do, and not to Scott and ask him for approval. It's they would have the green light from the board once we set the guidelines and agree to it. Go do it. Report back to us, and we'll check in every 6 months, 12 months, whatever that interval is. And if it's going well, we'll keep it along. If it starts to flounder, we would say stop, reset, repivot, redirect. We've been trying to do this for a while, so I commend you for the efforts that this team's put together as committee.
Yeah.
We just need to act and get moving, and not spend forever debating it. And I know Mr. Rand commented that in the past maybe we weren't very open to this, but we set some guidelines. We're just not going to open up $8 million and go have at it. When you spend the $8 million, come back and ask again. But set some sort of a budget and a guideline and let them go work.
And I think, just like we tell our entrepreneurs, we should pilot this and test it for a year with $100,000 or whatever the amount might be, right, with approval here, and then learn, did we do it the right way, or do we need to change this? And of course, we're not the first community to do this. We've got lots of benchmarks that we can use to help support that. No matter what we do, we'll never be risk-free, right? Some of these businesses are going to crash and burn, but that's okay as long as enough of them are successful. And that's what I want to get out of this, is that we're not investing $8 million in one company, but instead we're investing smaller amounts at a stage where they really need that money to help them get to the next stage where they can go to bigger investors for the next amount of money if they need it. Does that make sense? So I might need a prototype, and no one's going to give me several $1,000s to print a prototype, and that's what I really need to be able to show to people so that they can understand what I'm talking about and help me get to the next stage.
Well, I like the passport piece because it helps that team that runs the passport to learn what works and what entrepreneurs. Hey, these came through and they did this, and that worked really well. These did these things, but they missed 2 things here. So we develop our critical expertise. So now what this committee looks like in the future, or if we set something longer term, but to me, that helps also build some expertise in the entrepreneur development business.
And I think that the passport program, if it's a digital platform, which is what I think it has to be, also allows us a lot of back-end data, right? So we can actually look at the analytics and see, are people asking questions in the discussion forum because we're missing something that's really critical as an ecosystem, not necessarily in the platform, but is there a group of people that they can't find to get information? How many people make it all the way through? That's really good analytics to help us really judge, was this a good idea or not?
How do we plan to promote at some point? There's got to be a promotion, otherwise people won't come knocking on your door, right?
Yeah, so this goes back to this communication strategy about how do we help people who are trying to figure out where to start. How do we get them there? I mean, how many people come to me? And we hear local entrepreneurs on the radio going, yeah, I couldn't figure out who to talk to, so I created my own group. And you're like, that's great, but there actually are groups out there answering these questions for you. How do we support that to happen? And again, some of these things could be, with this communication strategy, a list of events that are going on to support people, mixers, workshops, etc., as well as who do you need to actually go talk to. One of the things we know in entrepreneurship is that you have to talk to people about your idea. You want to talk to real people, not just people at a cocktail party. Those are real people, but drinking. So.
But that's where you start, though. You find the real people there, and then go beat them.
And then you get their card there, right? And then you go see them. And then finally, I think we're going to see a couple more lines as we look at a diversified portfolio of things we can do. But we do want to support funding programs that help validate these ideas. So we are currently funding G-Beta, what's that other program?
Central Illinois Learning Laboratory.
Learning Laboratories, program we've been supporting, the Minority Development Business Development Center. I think we should still continue to support those groups as well, as we have been doing in the past. I think it's also a good use of those funds, because that's the people that they need to talk to support this, to get to these groups. I'd love to see my Bradley students who get through our accelerator program stay in Peoria and not run off to Chicago or St. Louis or something. And if we have a great place for them to get started with resources here, with, as we know, one of the most affordable city in the U.S., right? Then maybe we can keep them in this area. All right, any other questions? I did not talk for 50 minutes. Okay, feel free to come talk to me about
Can we
this.
give her a round of applause?
Thank you.
Bet your students don't do that.
Yeah, no, they never do. They mostly write evaluations about, I talk to about my dogs too often, so.
Any more questions for Dr. Blair?
Do you want me to black this out, or do you have it?
I can do it.
Okay.
All right. Any other items here? Springdale auditor, the auditor submitted a report.
The auditor did not submit a report, Mr. Chairman. There's the enterprise. There was activity for the enterprise zone, so there is the enterprise zone report in the packet this week. Happy to answer any questions about any of the information items.
We did get in my packet the check register and the same thing that the auditor used to produce, so, and then we got some recommendations for improvements.
Okay. At finance, right?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions on any of the items under informational? All right. Want to go through the standing committee agendas before we get to executive. We have an important executive session today, so to the extent we can use brevity. I don't know why I'm looking at you when I said that, because you're wringing your hands waiting for my next word. I would appreciate that, because we have counsel from out of town. Land use.
Do you want me to?
All right.
We had one zoning case. It was another Airbnb. There were 14 objections on file, but that was one petition that one person took around. Only one person objected at the ZBA meeting on it. We did approve this Airbnb. Yeah, that's about it.
Left.
That's all I have.
All right. Any questions for the committee vice chair? County Health?
Oh,
Yes.
we did have, well, it was a joint resolution for the fiscal year 2022 budget appropriation for COVID-19 grants. And it was a budget amendment for that grant, and it was 4 grants. That the Peoria City County Health Department fiscal year 22 revenue and spending appropriation is increased to reflect the grant awards in various spending categories, and that amount unspent at the end of the county fiscal year 22 will be rolled over for the fiscal year 23 budget for future action by the Peoria County Board.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice report. Thank you. Anyone else? Questions? My friend Rob Renaud.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did not have any resolutions. However, we did begin discussions on the elected official salaries
Okay.
that are coming up, and that would be the county clerk, treasurer, and the sheriff.
And the board members.
And the board members. Yes, especially since it is, seems like every 10 years the board considers board member raises, since we'll be off cycle until the next 10 years. Scott is sending out a memo of some information that he prepared at Linda and I's request, just some data for us to take into consideration. He sent that off to committee members on Friday, but he's going to send it out to the rest of the board members, just so you can have an idea of some of the information we're going to take into account for our recommendation.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Renaud?
Do you have any? So today was this discussion, or you have any proposals?
No proposals. We're hoping next committee will have a proposal. It just has to be done and voted on by the board by June, so bring it to the May board meeting.
I know it's a difficult topic. Thank you for your efforts. Do we still have folks on the phone?
No, they both left.
Okay.
Chairman, Dana, does that mean if we have to have salaries set by June 2, is that also when we have to set terms?
Terms for what?
For the board members.
Set terms for
2
board
years, 4
members?
years, 4
I
years.
thought that was done after the seating of the members.
I did believe it's before so that you know what you're running for.
Okay.
Oops.
Rules.
Yeah, which would be before the primary, actually, probably. You're right.
No, we did it after we were voted on before we never knew. We never knew whether it was a 2-year or 4-year until we were voted on. Every time that I've been in that.
I would
well,
assume there's some sort of statute regarding. what would
when
be
Rachel
the-
and I and Paul came on, we didn't know whether it was going to be a 2-year or 4-year until January, I think it was afterwards. Then they flipped the coin or whatever it was. And the odd number were one and the even another.
We'll get an answer on it.
Well, you get that
We'll
right?
get an answer at some point, right?
Yeah. Legal answer.
What committee does that go through?
Jenny's on the phone, she said she couldn't hear the question, she couldn't hear your question.
Jenny, my question was this: if you had to set salaries by June, is there a time that when the whether 2-year the board terms have to be set by?
I haven't looked at that issue. I can let you guys know. I guess I'm confused. What do you, why would that
Wouldn't
affect
have-
the salary setting?
It doesn't.
It wasn't. It was just in whether or not it coincided on a time frame. I don't know
okay.
if there was a time frame.
Yep, I can take a look at that. That's something I haven't reviewed in the statute yet.
Thank you. Hope you feel better.
What committee does that go through?
I think we did that beforehand, because Jim, we've
I
been
feel
on
like we did
12
too.
years, and that was our second year before we did it. I think they decided before we, because like what you had said, you have to know whether you're running for a 2-year or 4-year term. But
Jimmy, you said it was every 10 years?
yeah,
Every 10 years.
Okay.
It's every
That feels right. because I
442
knew-
or 244.
I knew I had a short term that I was running
Mr. Renaud, to your question, I will double check, but I have a high confidence level that it would be the redistricting committee.
for. All right. Well, we'll let the brain power figure it out for us and tell us what we're supposed to do. Thank you. Jim, do you have any comments from finance?
I think everybody was here, so I just nothing new. I think this was all hashed through at that time, so no sense.
So there was a rollover appropriation.
Rollover appropriation and there was a joint resolution from the county with the health department. There was encumbrance rollover, and then there was the doing of goodwill bonds. There's 3.
Thank you. Any questions then for the members? All right, so we have an important executive session today. Oh, wait. We have a resolution. Can I get a motion on the resolution regarding the compensation from the Peoria County Administrator?
So moved.
Thank you, Jim, and a second,
I'll
please.
second Betty.
All right, Betty. I don't think we need any discussion on this, but I'm certainly happy to have some. Any comments or questions? Finish this up in executive session. And all those in favor of the resolution as submitted, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. I'll record that as you have it. Thank you. Almost moved.